So with the Void Gauntlet patch pretty much upon us here, it'll probably be out by the time you're watching this video, but I've been testing a different setup because of the changes that are coming. I had already felt like Fireball was not really doing that much damage, but with some of the nerfs I feel is going to be doing too little to be viable anymore, in my setup in particular. So I've switched a few things around. I've been running Pillar instead of Fireball, and the actual playstyle itself has slightly changed, but it still is a Rapier focused build with a Fire Staff as our back weapon. But it has changed the playstyle a tiny bit, which I'll go over in a little bit here. But I'm gonna go over the talents that I've changed, how the playstyle itself has kind of shifted, and we're going to go over some PvP clips to actually see the build in action. But if you guys aren't subscribed, then don't forget to hit that notification bell to see when I upload new videos. But with all that out of the way, let's jump into the video. So as I mentioned, the playstyle has slightly shifted because we aren't running Fireball anymore and we are running Pillar. Pillar is a pretty unique ability where you can get quite a few resets on it with the Refreshing Pillar of Fire perk. So because we're running that ability, I am running this on my gear. And to take advantage of the resets that you can get on it, previously, as you've seen, I would, regardless of if I was in a brawl on a point or in open field, I would constantly be switching back and forth between my Fire Staff and Rapier. But more so for when we're in those brawls on the points or like Baron fights and stuff like that. We are on our Fire Staff bar, a lot more than previously. So in terms of the changes, our attributes are exactly the same, so you don't have to worry about altering anything for that. But I have made quite a few changes for the Fire Staff tree. So as I mentioned, I did drop Fireball for Pillar. And I also went and dropped Rune of Helios to get a couple of more passives, and I'm going to kind of explain the idea behind them. So we're still running Incinerate, we still have Burnout. As I mentioned, I picked up Pillar, and I still have the damage passes, which are Clear Mind, Spellslinger, and Prophet of a Fire God with Clear Casting. Now, the other passives that I picked up, the first one being Fiery Restoration. Heavy attacks reduce cooldowns by 10%, which is kind of crazy. So this combined with the Refreshing Pillar of Fire, the way I like to use this in brawls is I'll just kind of throw in a pillar into the bulk of the enemies and just kind of pepper them with a heavy attack or two, and that'll usually have my pillar back up and I can just kind of throw another pillar in. And depending on how many enemies you can hit, you can kind of throw back-to-back pillars, which is really nice. But taking a look at the other passives, because we're on our Fire Staff bar for a lot longer than previously, as I mentioned, I wanted to kind of focus on the Fortify passive you can get. So I have went and gone for Let It Burn. So Let It Burn combined with Watch It Burn is really nice because you can have a really long uptime on Fortify, almost 100%. So we have this with Kindle, and then we also have Keenly Fortified on our Fire Staff, which stacks. So it'll either stack while we're putting in light attacks, or we can kind of try to land it with our abilities or heavies when we have a melee player closing in onto us to try and alternate the fortifies. But I'm going to show you a clip of it here in a second, but the setup is actually really nice because you can have a really long uptime on Fortify while you're on your Fire Staff bar putting in those pillars. But these are the changes that I've made to the tree. And then if you take a look here, as I mentioned, as long as you are able to just keep a stack of burning on them, which you can 100% of the time apply with our light attack. If you take a look at my buff bar down there, we pretty much always have a stack of Fortify up. and then when we get a crit, we can have both of them up at the same time, which it stacks, which is really nice. But as long as you're able to keep a burning stack up on somebody during the fight, which is going to be pretty easy because there's a lot of people usually on points fighting, it gives you a little bit of the buffer room to be able to put your damage in and not be as worried about snipers and bowmen or mages, or even if a hammer player or melee player runs up on you. You have that fortify up to at least give you a slight buffer to not get completely bursted and give you a bit of time to get out. So as I mentioned, you see we're kind of sneaking here just to prepare for the initial fight on the point here, but we're going to try and set up to see if we can get a backline position on this point here. So we wait for these guys to just push up to the fight, and you see we have a couple of healers and ranged enemy players just getting some free cast off outside of the point into their team. So we displace them and do quite a bit of damage, forcing them onto the point. We aren't able to finish off a kill there, but we at least force them to be into the blender and have to try and avoid damage to support their team. So we do our job initially there by getting the kind of backline support into the fight, and we just jump in and try and do our best to stick on the backline of this fight if we can. So I jump in and I put a little bit of pressure in with a pillar here, but we take a bit of pressure, so I burn out through them, regenerate a little bit of health, jump up on top with this musket player here, and we put in a little bit of damage from the top, but I jump down and we land a beautiful incinerate, finishing off a kill, and just skirting that backline as I mentioned, trying to put in some damage where I can. I almost finished off a heavy player there, but the other range players that we have are doing a good job of keeping the backline kind of contained by putting in damage. So I'm just trying to jump in and get some finishes off where I can. And as we kind of proc the Berserker buff off that player there, we end up finishing off all of the players there, but trying to do our job by just playing backline, playing support, and putting in damage where we can, and we're able to capture that point there. Next up, we have a Baron fight here with the Fire Staff, and generally, I would usually switch to my Gauntlet for fights like this because of the fact that it's a pretty open area with nothing to line of sight with, so it was pretty hard to try to survive with the Fire Staff. But with the changes that I've made, having a really long uptime on Fortify, you're gonna see I do a pretty good job of avoiding quite a bit of damage in this fight with my mobility. But just having the fact in the back of my mind that I have access to Fortify to almost a pretty much constant uptime as long as I hit my abilities just gave me the you know, peace of mind to be able to use the Fire Staff in this situation. But you see the enemy team kind of pushing in here, and we start by just putting in a bit of damage with our pillar, and I try to jump in and go for a incinerate combo here, but they do a good job of dispersing. But I'm going to try and see if I can just buy a little bit of time if I can and put a little bit of damage into the backline here. And I jump in, hit a mage there with a combo, get a beautiful finish off with the pillar, and then we turn back to the rest of the enemies here and just do a good job of rolling in between and not letting anybody lock us down. Every time I'm on my Fire Staff, you see I pretty much always have Fortify up, but I don't want to waste too much time with this player outside of the fight, so we jump back into the middle here, flame dash through these guys, just try to put my burn on everybody, get another pillar, get another down right there, try to go in for an incinerate there. We would have killed that player, but we get cancelled by the hammer player there, and just supporting my team with the pillar, jumping right back into these guys here. And I honestly didn't think that I was going to enjoy pillar as much as I did, but it really excels at just putting damage into big groups. But we end up just kind of working with our team and finishing off the remaining stragglers here, but using our mobility and having that fortify so we don't get bursted by anything too big to pretty much survive and get a pretty nice Baron fight there on the Fire Staff. But yeah, I will be doing a bulk of the testing with this setup once the patch goes live, because I'll actually be able to see where the build kind of stands with the changes. So I'll be doing a couple of update videos to see where this setup is at. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day.